Hello dear students. In today's lecture I am going to deal with the topic elements of poetry. It's going to be a continuation of the discussion of what is poetry. So before going to the discussion of elements of poetry, we shall remember what we studied about the definition and meaning of poetry. You all know that poetry is a collection of words and that expresses emotions. Matthew Arnold defined poetry as the criticism of life, and William Wordsworth defines poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. Similarly, there are many definitions of poetry. As I said in the earlier class, that to define poetry is a difficult task. Many people struggle to answer the question, what is poetry? So in today's class, we shall understand in brief some of the elements of poetry. So those are prosody, rhythm, alliteration, assonance, imagery, and the diction. Prosody in Kannada we call it Chandassu. It signifies the systematic study of versification, the study of verse, study of poetry. That is the principles and practice of meter, rhyme, and stanza poems. Meter, rhyme, and stanza poems. Meter signifies, meter says, the syllables, stressed and unstressed words that create rhythm, and the rhyme schemes, different rhyme schemes, and stanza forms of poems. So sometimes the term prosody is extended to include also the study of speech sound patterns and effects of such as alliteration, assonance, euphony, and onomatopoeia. What are these words? Alliteration. Alliteration is repetition of a vowel sound. Assonance, effect created by vowel sound. Alliteration is actually repetition of consonant sound, and assonance is repetition or an effect created by vowel sound. Euphony and onomatopoeia, you are going to study these things in a detailed manner later. The word prosody is derived from the Greek word prosodia, which means a song sung to music. A song sung to music. Actually, the word prosody comes from Greek word prosodia, that means a song sung to music. It treats laws regulating the structure of verses or lines of a poetry. It may therefore be called the grammar of verse. You may call prosody as the grammar of verse because it deals with the structure of verses or lines in poetry. Meter, rhyme, regularity of pauses, etc., which all contribute to the harmonious voicing of its language, come under prosody. Prosody is a discussion, as I said, of meter, rhyme, regularity of pauses, how pauses come in poem. All these things come under prosody. For the art of pleasing, poetry depends upon two things. You know that poetry is an art. What kind of art? An art which pleases the reader and the writer also. So, for this art of pleasing, poetry depends on two things. The one is content, another is form. The thoughts which it expresses, that means the content, and the manner in which the thoughts are expressed, that means the form. Prosody deals with the form. It discusses about the skeleton of the poem. Prosody is a discussion of the structure of the poem, how a poem is structured, how many lines are there in the poem, whether the words in the poem are stressed or unstressed. In Kannada, we have Chandassu. You might have studied Khyata Karnataka Rutta and Shatpadi, Tripadi, Chaupadi. Like that, in English also, there is a prosody. A poem has to have some things like meter, rhyme scheme, proper rhyme scheme, and many things like that. So there are four distinguishable prosodic meter patterns, metrical patterns: syllabic prosody, accentual prosody, accentual syllabic prosody, and quantitative prosody. I am not going to discuss these things in detail because you are going to study them in your future. And the next word, next element of poetry is rhythm. The word rhythm, you are already acquainted. You might have heard about this word. In songs, we have rhythm, they say. Rhythm is something related with music. The word rhythm comes from Greek word rhythmos, and that comes from Rio, which means to flow, means the measured moment or musical flow of language. If you read a poem, you will understand there is a measured movement, there is a proper flow. If poetry flows in a manner, it will attract the listener. It consists in the periodical recurrence of pauses and accents, producing a harmonious effect. What is rhythm? Periodical recurrence of pauses. There is a pause between the word, and that pause has a pattern, and that is called rhythm. We shall see some examples for that later. Webster's dictionary defines rhythm as an ordered, recurrent alteration of strong and weak elements in the flow of sound and silence in speech. An ordered, recurrent alteration. Recurrent means repetitive. Alteration of strong and weak elements in the flow of sound and silence in speech. Remember, in poetry, the words are important, but not just the words. Sometimes the silence is also important. The reader should be able to understand the silence. Silence is important because it may enrich the meaning. Silence is important because it may be attractive to listen. It can be described as the beat and pace of a poem, and can help to strengthen the meaning of words and ideas in a poem. It's a distribution of stresses and pauses with regular intervals of time between them that produces effects of the poem on our ears. For example, when you read aloud, Blake writes you might have studied Tiger, written by Blake. If you read that poem, that lines, you will understand rhythm. For example, Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. There is a flow and there is a rhythm. We can sense the rhythm of the sounds if you read that poem aloud. That's what's about rhythm. Now let's understand alliteration. Alliteration is a figure of speech. It's the repetition of a speech sound in a sequence of nearby words. Repetition of a speech sound, a sound in a sequence of a nearby words. It's also known as the head rhyme or initial rhyme because it comes in the initial, in the beginning of words. Usually, the term is applied only to consonants and only when the recurrent sound is made emphatic because it begins a word or a stressed syllable within a word. Usually, repetition of a consonant is called alliteration, and that is recurrent sound. Alliteration is a recurrent, repetitive sound. It's made emphatic because it begins a word or a stressed syllable within a word. In your school days, probably you might have studied a poem written by John Keats, Dove. The first line of the poem is, I had a dove and the dove died. Remember, the word da, 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 da is repeating here. It is an example of alliteration. As a poetic device, it is often discussed with assonance and consonance. What are those words, assonance and consonance? Let's discuss that later. Alliteration is a very, very old device indeed in English verse, older than rhyme and is common in verse generally. In Old English poetry, alliteration was a continual and essential part of metrical scheme. It was compulsory, it was essential in Old English literature, Old English poetry. And until the late Middle Ages was often used thus. It continued up to the Middle Ages. But however, alliterative verse becomes increasingly rare. It becomes very rare after the end of the 15th century. It creates some musical effects in the text that enhances the pleasure of reading a literary piece. If poetry has alliteration, it enhances the pleasure of reading it. It makes reading and recitation of the poems attractive and appealing. It also renders flow and beauty to a piece of writing. Some common examples, we may call them tongue twisters too. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Concentrate here on the sound of P. The P sound repeats. There's a recurrence of the P sound. It's an example of alliteration. She gave the big dog a hug. She gave the big dog a hug. The sound of G is repetitive, recurrent here. That is an example of alliteration. These are some common examples. We shall take some classical examples. Kubla Khan, written by Coleridge. In that poem, one line, there is a line, 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion. 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion. Look at the sound M. Miles meandering with a mazy motion. Another example from Mutual Life by Mackay. A wild cat fur fire in a bracken bush twitches his dovetail, rounds his amber eyes. At a rockaway rabbit humped on the world. The air crackles about him. His world is a rabbit's size. What sounds are repeating here? What are the sounds that are recurrent in this poem? You concentrate and understand. The next word, the next elements of poetry is assonance. Alliteration is a repetition of consonants, consonant sound. Assonance is a repetition of vowel sound. Sometimes it is called vocalic rhyme. It consists of the repetition of a similar vowel sounds, usually close together, to achieve a particular effect of euphony, a pleasure. It's a contradictory to alliteration. Alliteration is a repetition of consonant sound. Assonance is a repetition of vowel sound. It's a repetition of identical or similar vowel sounds in the stressed syllables and sometimes in the following unstressed syllable of neighboring words. What are stressed and unstressed syllables? Do you know? Try to understand those things yourself. Or you can ask me, ask your teacher later. It's a distinct form of rhyme in the consonants differ, although the vowels or diphthongs match. As a substitute for rhyme at the end of end verse lines, assonance had a significant function in early Celtic, Spanish, French versification, but in English it has been an optional poetic device used within and between lines of verses for emphasis or musical effect. So, it is not as famous as alliteration in English poetry. It was very famous, it was compulsory in Celtic, Spanish and French versification, but in English it was optional. Assonance as a device is used to achieve a particular effect of euphony, pleasing or sweet sound. What is euphony? Euphony means pleasing or sweet sound. See the example here. Pale, sail, hit, fit. E, E, A and A sounds are repeating and those are vowel sounds. Here, note the recurrent long I in the opening lines of Keats' Ode on Grecian Urn. Poem Ode on Grecian Urn written by Keats. The opening lines of that poem are, Thou still unravished of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time. Thou still unravished of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time. There is a flow of vowel sound. O, unravished, quietness, thou foster child of silence, slow time. Look at the repetition of vowel there. Another example from Tennyson's Lotus Eaters. And round about the keel with a face of pale, dark faces pale against that flame, the mild-eyed melancholy lotus eaters came. In Lotus Eaters, this is a description of the lotus eaters, the people. And round about the keel with face pale, dark faces pale against that flame, the mild-eyed melancholy lotus eaters came. Concentrate on the vowel sound here. Round about the keel with face pale. O A. Dark faces fail against that flame. The mild-eyed melancholy lotus eaters came. That was about assonance. And another important element of poetry is imagery. Imagery, description. It's a special use of language that very often avoids direct description. It's not a direct description, it avoids direct description often, but conveys to us the meaning by causing us to read the images very carefully. That means to understand images, you need to concentrate on much. Those words, those description. You need to read the imagery very carefully so that you will be able to understand the intention or the beauty of the poem. C.D. Lewis, in his poetic image, says, an image is a picture made out of words. Image is a picture made out of words. Picture portrayed in words, you can say. Imagery is a picture portrayed in words, created in words. And that a poem may itself be an image composed from a multiplicity of images. Sometimes image may explain something. A part of a poem may be an image. Sometimes the whole poem itself may be an image or imagery. Imagery or visual representations are experienced by the reader of a poem or poetry. The reader experiences imagery. All literary languages use images to appeal to the reader's senses. What are those senses? Touch, taste, smell, sound, and visual. Sometimes when you read poems, you feel some taste, touch, smell, sound, and visual. Not actually, but you may feel like that. In some cases, all senses are merged, as well as see, as we shall see in a particular kind of imagery, which is called synesthesia, or else the imagery captures movement and energy, which is called kinesthetic imagery. Poetry, in particular, conveys emotions, situations, and drama by compressing these into images which appeal instantly and powerfully to these senses. Imagery is what causes us to imagine the situation, individual setting, or event being described in the poem. To make you understand what is imagery, I shall quote a poem from Kannada literature written by Chanvir Kanavi. ಒಂದು ಮುಂಜಾವಿನಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂತುರಿನ ಸೋನಮೆಳೆ ಸೋ ಎಂದು ಶ್ರುತಿ ಹಿಡಿದು ಸುರಿಯುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹಿಮ್ಮೇಳವನೆ ಬೀಸಿ ಬಹ ಸುಳಿಗಾಳಿ ತೆಂಗುಗಳ ಗರಿಗಳ ನಡುವೆ ನುಸುಳುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. He was describing a morning and a breeze. ಒಂದು ಮುಂಜಾವಿನಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂತುರಿನ ಸೋನೆ ಮಳೆ ಸೋ ಎಂದು ಸುರಿಯಿತು. How was it drizzling? ತುಂತುರಿನ ಸೋನೆ ಮಳೆ ಸೋ ಎಂದು ಸುರಿಯುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. So look at the description of the poet there. He is describing rain, drizzling, and the morning. But if he simply says it was raining beautifully, it was a beautiful breeze, a reader may not sense what he actually felt at that time. So he is giving some images. He is making us to feel what he was feeling. So this is called imagery. Imagery is what causes us to imagine the situation. After reading these kind of poems, you will be able to understand the situation. You will be able to imagine the situation, what the poet was feeling. Individual setting or event being described in the poem. Some examples. This example is taken from Milton's a famous epic, Paradise Lost, where he was explaining about, he was describing the hell. How was the hell? The dismal situation, waste and wild, a dungeon horrible, on all sides round as one great furnace flamed. Yet from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible, served only to discover sights of woe, visions of sorrow, doleful shades. How was the hell? Hell was like a dungeon, like a jail. Dismal situation, waste and wild. The hell was like a great furnace flamed. Yet from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible. So these words this description itself is an imagery. He is giving many images for us to understand how the hell was. Another example, a famous poem written by Robert Burns. Oh, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. He is describing his love or his lover, but he is giving some concrete images. How was his love? His love was like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Rose here stands for love. Rose is an image which stands for love or his lover. Oh, my love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. Image is related with the visual, another is with a sound. Another example, a famous poem written by William Wordsworth, Daffodils. I wandered lonely as a cloud. He was moving. How was? He was moving like a lonely cloud that floats on high over the vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. He witnesses a beauty in nature. He sees thousands of golden daffodils and he is astonished. He is very happy. He wants to express that, his happiness. How can he express? He can select some images and he can express. And when you read these descriptions, you also feel what Wordsworth felt at that particular situation. That is what is imagery. And the last element of poetry of this discussion is diction. What is diction? In general definition of diction is the way in which words are used in speech or writing. It may be in speech or in writing, but how words are used, that is what is called diction. Pramod K. Nair defines diction as simply the choice of words used in a poem. Selection of words used in poem. In our earlier discussion, I had explained you that poetry is a collection of selected words. Poet is very particular about the words, about his selection of words. So that is what is called diction. You can simply define it like this. Diction is simply the choice of words used in a poem. We can think of diction as the style of the poem. In literature, it signifies the kinds of words, phrases and sentences, sentence structure, and sometimes also figurative language that constitute any literary work. Owen Barfield defines words, diction as words selected and arranged in such a way that their meaning arouses or is obviously intended to arouse aesthetic imagination. The term is more often used to refer specialized language which is peculiar to poetry. Poetry uses words and figures not normally found in common speech or prose. So these are elements are very important in the discussion of poetry and understanding poetry. So hope you understood the elements of poetry. For further information, for further knowledge, you can refer these books that I have given here. Thank you for listening.